All of CEP's work essentially points towards the same goal, and that's providing data and insight to enable funders to achieve the greatest positive impact with their resources. Especially when we consider the urgency of these fast-changing times, I think this year's conference has been aptly named Aligning for Impact, Connecting the Dots.
If circumstances are held constant, and some do exceptionally well and others do not, then the fundamental answer for what separates the great from the good cannot be circumstance. The good news is, properly framed, these are wonderful times. Because it is in precisely these kinds of times where the opportunities, and especially the opportunities for contribution, massive, lasting contribution, go up. What can you do? And what must you do to not waste the opportunities presented by this time of crisis? One of the reasons why I really love what they do at the Center for Effective Philanthropy is because so much of their work is focused on trying to put some facts around this question of what's effective contribution. The presence of a to-do list without a correspondingly robust stop-doing list is a singular lack of discipline. Disciplined action begins with piercing clarity about what we choose to not do. In a world awash with opportunity for contribution, it's what we choose to not do, because there's so much to do. And I would like to actually challenge every one of you that before you leave this conference to start your stop doing list. The true signature of mediocrity is chronic inconsistency. The true signature of mediocrity is chronic inconsistency. We live in an era of change where we banty the word change all about, but we banty it about in a very undisciplined way. The question how the world is changing is an entirely different question than how we want to change the world, which is an entirely different question than how should we change in order to accomplish that. The cornerstone of a culture of discipline is that people understand that they do not have jobs, they have responsibilities. And so one of the key things is to toss out job descriptions and to replace them with people who say, I am the one person ultimately responsible for X and Y and Z. And it is when people are unable to articulate their true responsibilities that we find the infection of the types of bureaucracies that bring great enterprises down. There's no contradiction in my mind between the pursuit of supreme excellence and humility. Because if you're really pursuing supreme excellence, you're always humble because you know you are absolutely never there.
CEP's brief history is rooted in an understanding of how different foundations are, and other grant makers too, from other institutions in our society. Foundations are not like venture capital firms whose returns can be easily calculated across very different investments. Foundations are not like operating nonprofits, which face pressures that foundations don't and lack the same opportunities to look across fields and communities. Foundations are not like government agencies, which are bound by bureaucracy and political realities. Foundations are like foundations, and improving foundation effectiveness requires research and experience that is focused on foundations.
The entrepreneurial dream in this country in the for-profit sector is start an operation, develop a product, do a prototype, start a business, take your business to the point that you can do what? Take it public and cash out rich. Well, why can't we do the same thing for nonprofits? Take them to the point where they don't cash out and get rich, but take them to the point that they can cash out and the quality of life in America gets rich. because they can be sustained.
Can we feel positive both about how the people we write about in the book made their money and how they're giving it away? And do we actually want to rebuild that kind of world?
But it's increasingly desperate, I think, to defend this argument when the tide of politics and ideas and public opinion is turning back towards, in some ways, some quite old-fashioned ideas. Government intervention, democratic accountability, redistributive politics, market regulation, and civil society activism.
What's been beneficial about business practices influencing philanthropy? I'd argue it's mostly about efficient implementation of the practical approaches that solve problems. And I think, frankly, those of us in this sector pay far too little attention to that.
I think there's a lot more innovation in the management structures of many corporations than there is in most of the nonprofits with which we deal with. So I would be the last person to say we can't learn anything from business. But I do think it also goes the other way. And I think the recent election, again, shows us that you can run a very effective organization taking your lessons from social movements, and bottom-up power. And you, at the same time, as you can learn things from social innovation and from the new technologies. It's all a hybrid.
I would suggest that, in fact, at a time like this, the effort to measure your impact is even more important. When you've got shrinking resources and increasing need, you got to know how well you're doing so that you're not wasting the resources you've got and that you're focused them on the most effective strategies with the highest potential for really deep, significant impact. So it's hard because you're thinking every dollar I spend on what we might put in the administrative bucket is a dollar I could be sending out the door in a grant. But on the other hand, it's going to make your grant making better, and it's going to have a higher impact in the communities you're serving. And if you then go to the next level and share the results of that broadly with those who are working in the same field, whatever knowledge you're generating, positive lessons, lessons from failure, examples, models, data, can help leverage the field. So it can be another contribution to producing change at a time when we really need it.
I hope when we all talked, or a few of us have been talking about, will we emerge stronger after 5 years? I hope philanthropy emerges stronger after 5 years in terms of how it's understood and how its voice is understood and has been heard. And that means we're all going to have to be more transparent, tell our stories more often, because I think we've all seen, we certainly have in California, many instances where people don't really know the variety of ways in which foundations are being engaged. So I think it's important both for clarity as well as for that longer-term view that people understand what philanthropy is doing.
This is a moment where our respective roles as philanthropy and government have to be deeply examined and perhaps dramatically redefined, but they all, and this has been a theme throughout this whole conference, they all exist in tandem, even if the tandem is going to shift a bit. Everybody has a role to play.
Because with your research, your programs, your initiatives, and your funding, you're doing the same thing. You're creating the mechanism to speak out, and you're allowing others to speak about the issues which each of you in this room care so much about. And I recognize that your work at times is very, very challenging. But you need to know that what you do is very crucial because you're the catalysts to create a better world. So on that note, in the words of Ms. Navarro, good night and good luck. Thank you.